special guest.
Our special guest, child and adolescent family therapist, Darby.
I think they said you have to hold the microphone up, so if you can't hear me, remind me. I wanted to thank you all for coming. I was pretty insistent when they asked me. I said I'll definitely do Zoom, but I would really love to do in person if at all possible. So thank you so much for coming out. I want everybody to feel safe, but I think it makes so much more sense after going through COVID, and the topic is parenting through COVID. It really makes sense that we break the barrier and start to do live interactive stuff, because that really was social isolation, is what your kids have probably experienced and all of us have experienced as the biggest issue through COVID. I'm gonna have to find this a different way.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to do this. Hey, Alan, will you go to the, is that better? Is that better? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I might need an elbow brace at some point, but okay. One of the reasons, I don't want to scare you, but to start with this, I want to make a sort of a framework and a case of why it was difficult, and then neurologically why it was particularly difficult for your children in the middle school ages, and then we'll go into what you can do to mitigate and hopefully prevent the kind of issues that you've seen. So if we look at this, you could read this, but
Keeps cutting out. Yeah.
stopping. Is that better? Okay. What's most alarming, if we come down to children ages 5 to 11, the emergency department visits increased by 24% as we started COVID. That's astronomical. And then when we get into the age group that takes your... Can you guys hear me if I talk?
Yes.
Okay, I can't do that. Sorry. If you can't hear me, I'll try and talk really loud, or if people come forward a little bit. Otherwise, I will turn this off. Okay. Do you guys want to come down further just so you can hear me? If you're good, and if you can't hear me, just put your thumbs up, and I'll try and talk really loudly. That's going to be too distracting. So, what we saw and what we're seeing now is this very last piece here about children's ages 12 through 17. Mental health related emergency department visits increased by 31%. Never before did emergency rooms, emergency departments is what they call them now, see the mental health coming in. For kids 12 through 15, the huge escalation is eating disorders, which is really scary. And then from about 15 to 17, it was suicide. So that shows us that there was a large component of the society that were struggling greatly with the isolation that COVID brought, and the fact that everything went pretty much to an external world. Their only contact really was something that they couldn't touch. And that, especially, we'll get into it a little bit more, but if everything's external, so that was, you watch it on the news, it's all the social media, you don't have any real touch points, then when something's negative, the only thing you can blame is yourself, because you're not there and you don't quite get why you're not there. So especially when you're developing and you don't have a ton of experience, which is the kids from 5th grade through 13, 14 years old, is I'm inadequate. So that is why we've seen these huge escalations, and it's really important that we focus on this now to prevent it and kind of stop it in its tracks. The Eating disorders are because a lot of times that was control. It's like, I can't control most of my world. It's pretty uncertain what's gonna happen to me, but I can control my eating. So it also, eating disorders aren't also always really conscious. Once you notice the results, they become more conscious. And by the way, really important, that wasn't just girls. Predominantly girls, but a huge increase with boys. So that was really alarming, or is really alarming. The suicidal piece it's a combination. There has been a huge media push towards making suicidal ideation kind of popular, right? Dark, I'm depressed, I need to withdraw, I might need to cut or self-harm, became very popular on TV shows, through music. All of that stuff are things that I would love for you all to watch because it does have a message. Your kids absorb it subconsciously, and we've seen the impact is great if we look at that. 31% is just unacceptable. It's catastrophic. So why is it so catastrophic for this age group? I love this slide, and Alan's probably works with me all the time. He's probably sick of seeing this, but it is so important that we know when we talk about your kids are developing their brains up until age 24, 25, we don't know exactly which, but if you think about this, you're somewhere in this 13-year-old to 15-year-old range. Even some of the kids, if you've got any learning disability, if you've got ADHD, again, it's not a problem except to know that neurologically you're going to be behind anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. So that means your brain hasn't grown that much. There's nothing wrong with your brain, it just hasn't grown at the same rate. So if you look at that, there's still a huge amount of growth to come. And that's where we see it's critical that you know where that is. So if we go into that, our task, you can go to the next one. Our task going from lower school or little fourth and fifth's kind of on the cusp is you go from just kind of getting your tasks together. I can get my backpack, I know what my homework is, I know I have soccer practice. You don't have the exact details, but you kind of getting a sense of organization. You start to develop the ability to think inferentially, which means you're going from everything's pretty concrete to the world's a little bigger place. It's a little more uncertain. My parents have always told me everything's gonna be okay. COVID came, and all of a sudden that message is taken off the table. It's like, okay, I think we're gonna be okay, but we're not really sure what's coming. So if you think about all those things that started to creep in for your kids as they're also trying to develop this shift from concrete, everything's okay, like that means concrete thinking is if you break your leg or your arm, it literally is gone, right? To, okay, what could that look like? So that piece is really starting to take place from 4th to 5th grade. So you hit COVID with that, and all of a sudden they're feeling like, okay, I can handle uncertainty. And then we said, oh, wait a sec. We don't know when this is gonna end. We don't know when you can see your friends. We don't know when you can go back to school. And by the way, you're supposed to be starting to develop your identity. You're starting neurologically to think, who am I? What can I be in this social world? So if you think about that, that's like a tsunami, right? All at once. So that's where these kids genuinely felt like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's where we see the struggle. Your kids, I would label as tweens, because from middle school on, their role, the whole role of pre-adolescence, adolescence, is to develop kids so they can be independent adults and they can manage the world. So that is where psychologically, what we would consider your task is identity versus role confusion. Who am I? Am I okay in different worlds? And do I have to be, is peer pressure a thing I have to follow, right? So that's what they're starting to struggle with. And neurologically, the brain is hardwired to start to help them make that. Go to the next. So again, if we think of this in bigger terms, we're pushing towards independence, and we're pushing towards building relationships. So we're going from, with mom and dad to being alone. Can you guys see?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me to move. Okay. All of these tasks are critical for your kids to be able to handle if they're going into the heart of high school and adolescence and going to be able to adjust on their own. All of those pieces, if you think about it, if we come to COVID, got pushed where? To screen, right? Mm-hmm. So the socializing taken away, being on time, what did it really matter? Like I kind of can get on my class, even in bed, right? I don't even have to put on clothes. Managing relationships, I really don't have to do any of that. I can even, in fact, go on black on my screen and no one can ever see me. Unsupervised peer activities, you didn't really have peer activities. So again, everything that your brain is hardwired to be doing was taken away. Next. This, I think, is one of the least known facts about children, adolescents, and teens. One reason we struggle so much, and we'll always say, I told you that, and then your kid's like, well, I didn't think about that, or I didn't hear you. They actually didn't. Because the way they build intelligence really isn't through the history book, unless we can make it live and interactive in some way. Children's intelligence is built on experience. As human beings, we are experiential, which means we get our knowledge through what we experience. And if you think about that, we all have told our kids a million times, like, well, I told you so, or you could have done it that way. But think of all the times that like someone said to you, oh, you just need to do that. And you're like, no, I got it. And then afterwards you're like, you were right, right? That's how we build our intelligence. And then we start to adjust what we know through experiences. So if all of a sudden you're in your house and you're not interacting with anybody, it's very limited and it's only external on a screen, you're confused. You're not building knowledge. So the math, the English, any of those pieces were really hard to take in because it wasn't something you were doing in live terms. From a learning perspective, the way we learn, especially up until you're pretty close to college age, is read it, write it, see it, say it. If you think about it, all of that, again, was taken off the table. So, we can go to the next one. As we start to think about how does this impact who we become, and what we're trying to do, these are the three big things we're building through middle school. Self-esteem, self-regulation, and self-efficacy. Self-esteem, they build through their world. Every day they come to a place like this, and there are a million interactions that kind of tell them, okay, I'm okay. My math test, I got a great grade. The assistant principal said hello to me. All these pieces, my teacher likes me, I help the kid who's struggling. All those pieces build your self-esteem, okay? But that's all information coming from the external world. Self-regulation, hopefully by the time they're in middle school, they are doing that pretty much on their own. That's knowing what their homework is, turning things in on time, knowing even though that kid just said something mean to me, I'm not gonna hit him. I'm gonna be able to hold myself back. I'm gonna be able to delay my gratification. All those pieces are really important. But again, a lot of self-regulation is built on external world. The piece that got lost with COVID is the most critical piece of development in middle school for any kid anywhere, is the piece of self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is the internal building of, okay, I've got a core, I've got values, and I have a sense I'm gonna be okay even when this external world isn't what I was told it was gonna be. Who am I? What can I do? That's resilience, it's growth mindset. There's a million words you can put on that, but self-efficacy is what we really wanna see kids building. And with COVID, it was very hard to do because they didn't have any real life experiences. And again, that's how they build their intelligence. That's how they start to build all these different things that are critical. Okay. So that is kind of where we are neurologically and psychologically as we go into this whole teenage years, the preteens. Then what started to come up were, what are the real problems? So peers. We just talked about how they're hardwired for all this interaction and that builds all these amazing things. There is a real, it's called, I'm gonna forget it right now. Dunbar. The Dunbar theory is that you can only scientifically hold about 50 people in your brain at a time. So that doesn't mean over a lifetime, but it means, if you think about it, you've got your high school friends, your young friends, your college friends. At any given time, our mind kind of interacts with really not more than 50 people that we would call in a peer circle, okay? So, and that's where you get your feedback. Who can I trust? Who can I interact with? What happened is we go into COVID, we take these guys with raw brains that are looking for all kinds of ways to develop themselves. They're getting all these messages, and we go to anything social media wise, where the idea is the more likes you get, in theory, the more popular you are. And if you look at these numbers, it's literally crazy what these kids get. Like, how do you know 500 people, right? How do you know 200 people? Literally absurd. Once we get out there, what these kids start doing then, again, is they're reaching for the external world. That means I'm okay. How do I validate myself? I'm not live, so I don't have the self-esteem. I can't really regulate because it's all sort of in one room. And then what do I do to build my self-efficacy? No one cares who I am inside. All they care about is maybe what I look like, or what I said, or who I'm with. So all of this exterior part becomes what they're looking to try and find, but there's no way to regulate it, and there's no touch point. It means nothing. Really significant that this is what was drawn towards and pushed, I think, for all of us, if we're to be quite honest. I mean, I went to Instagram at weird times when I never should have. Maybe developed a shopping issue. But, you know, we all have done this, so it's not just the kids, but I could regulate, right? You can regulate. Young kids can't. They actually become addicted to this because it was giving them what their brain is saying, I need validation. So when we go to that, and when we're in a period of shutdown, that's what's happening. When I first talked to Marissa and Carrie about speaking, they said, well, social media isn't really what we want you to talk about. And I said, I know. So I'm gonna sneak it in here, okay? So there is no way we can talk about the impact of COVID on any of us, particularly developing minds, without speaking about the impact of social media or technology. It obviously does amazing things. So many things that we never could have done before. However, what was particularly a problem and is becoming more and more of a problem are all of those pieces that I've stated right up here. And the reason it's particularly difficult is because, again, if we go back to how our body's supposed to work, neurologically how we're building, there's two key factors. One is called epistemic trust, and the other is called contingent bonding. So that first one, contingent bonding, is when it starts when we're little and we have the newborn baby, and the babies start to interact. They recognize a mom, they cry when they see a face they don't know. That whole piece, again, live interaction is what we're meant to be. That all starts to develop. That bonding piece starts to develop. It's critical for our development. It is critical for intelligence. It is critical for any academic learning that you need to do anywhere. And the next piece of that helps us build that is called epistemic trust. So the problem with going to everything technology, and particularly in a school where you had to do the Zoom learning, is if you don't really develop all that ability in live terms about bonding, who's safe, what do I trust, how do I connect, then the next part is you're interacting with me and you look great, but I don't really know how I impact you. I don't have any ability to bond with you, any external, like teachers, whatever, I can't bond with you, and I don't know if I can really trust you. In fact, I don't even know what I should do with this whole trust thing. Some kids trust everyone, right? They think everything they're seeing is something they should be doing, or they're inadequate if they don't do it. The bonding piece, it's like, oh my gosh, if I could just have that life. What happens then is this catastrophic piece of, if I'm not out there and I can't touch it, I'm inadequate. I'm not worthwhile. I need to get skinnier. I need to get smarter. I need to find more people out there to connect with. My world's not adequate. I don't want my parents. I hate my siblings. I need something more. There's this driving for more, more, more. Next slide. This is what happens. Really important to look at this for a second. All of those likes, the looking, the changing, all of that becomes, if we look at, this is a slide where they started to show there is very little difference. The dopamine pump is the pleasure pump in our brain that says, awesome, go for it. That is very similar for social media as it is for cocaine. On a developing brain, that's catastrophic. Really, really dangerous.
Where's that slide from?
Where is the slide from? Good question. I can get you, I probably have it on 5 different sources. This one, I believe, is from a Harvard Medical School McLean study. You can see it anywhere. This has been repeated several times. I can get you the information. We are, by the way, going to put this up on a Zoom link if anybody wanted to follow it. We just wanted to try and lure you in live. So we said we couldn't do that. But again, what's super important to know is if we go back to that very first slide, the brain's developing. Anytime you have a developing brain, the cells are not formed. So why is it dangerous? Because the cells are in a raw form. If you add anything to them, any kind of chemical, then it alters how they react. You are literally rewiring your children's brains when they become addicted to social media. Almost as much as if they were on cocaine. It is an addiction. It's very hard to get away from. Okay? So that is, therein lies the danger. It rewires the brain. It isn't like you or me that can say, okay, I'm going off of Instagram. It's like, I need that because actually the chemicals are being released. The dopamine is saying, I need more. You get more likes, I need more. Oh my God, this is great. Or the bad part is, I didn't get any likes. Or I don't get enough likes, right? So then it's that negative impact. Oh my gosh, I need to get skinnier. What's it like if you're 12 and you've got to get skinnier, right? To fit in. All those things, and then that becomes the obsession, and you lose the piece of learning and developing and interacting, which is what you're meant to be doing.
So I feel like a lot of parents know all this information. It's just, how do we fix it?
I think parents kind of know this information.
Well, I know this information. So how do we fix it? Given it coming out of COVID and getting worse.
So that's great, and we will get to that, but the way you fix it is you go back to doing things in real time, okay? I spoke to a man last night on the phone about his kids with the iPad and the internet. They don't want to go to sports anymore. He's a 5th grader. Doesn't want to do sports. They're stupid. They're boring. Doesn't want to have any friends over. Wants to get home and get on the iPad, okay? So what do? It's not really that hard. If your son was saying, I want some cocaine, what would you say? No. I don't know why it is so difficult for people to say, no, we need to limit this. This isn't good for you. You're growing, you're developing. You need to interact in real time. And if you're bored, I don't care. I really don't care if you're bored.
That's the key.
So I am very, the kids that did the best through COVID, and not only middle school kids had a hard time, and they're gonna recover pretty quickly if we pull back and go to what we can count on. What can you count on? You can count on things that are life terms, all right? That's what you need to do. You don't have to get rid of it entirely. You have to put it in a place where, okay, you've had a long day, or you didn't get invited to that birthday party. Let's watch a show together. Okay, so that's replicating some bonding. So again, I'm not saying you have to go back to the old ages, like when I was a kid, but you do have to be able to say, as parents, no, this is not good for you. We need to do other things, okay? That's what you do about it. And one reason is I love to speak to kids, middle school kids, high school kids. No one actually tells them this. They say the phone is bad for you. Get off your phone. I don't want you playing Xbox because it sucks up all that time and your grades aren't good enough. It's like, okay. But if you were to say, look at this. It's kind of scary. I had a kid in my office the other day, and he's got some pretty extensive issues, and he told me he's at boarding school, and it's protected by confidentiality, so I can't tell anybody, and obviously you have no idea who it was, so I can use it as an example here. But he said, my roommate gets high every day. He's in 9th grade. And he said, I did get high a couple times. What's the problem with it? So, and it's not something we're doing today, but I could do another time. I showed him the mechanisms of THC on the neurotransmitters in the brain. He's a very bright kid. And he's like, oh my God. It's like, what is it like if I have nicotine? I showed him nicotine. I showed him the different things. And he's like, yeah, nobody ever talks about that. We don't give kids credit, and we don't give kids the information. If you say, I don't want you on your phone because it impacts your brain and it changes the cells in your brain, so we actually just aren't doing it, they're gonna be okay with it over time. And more importantly, as parents, you have to be consistent. You can't give it to them when it's convenient for you, but take it away when you're bummed or you've had a long day. So those are the things that you do, and that's where it's not really that hard. You don't have to go buy something, you don't have to hire someone. You just have to be really consistent about, I'm your parent. This isn't good for you.
So I don't have any issue with iPads, fine, take it away. It's the phones that are really hard because on the one hand, it's also their connection to their friends. So texting, FaceTime, that's how they connect. So how do you take that away from them because you feel like you want them to connect, but then the second they're not doing that, they're on Instagram.
Right, so again, the phone, you have to have the same thing. What about texting as a means of communication? How many people here have sent a text to the wrong person and it probably wasn't so nice? Okay, how many people have read a text and then gotten mad? Like, what? How did you say that? And maybe you just read it too quickly and you missed a punctuation or a wrong word went in and you're like, how could they say that? Dating for young kids over text, you're gonna connect with someone and break up with someone? Think about how all of that impacts a brain that's working. Your task is to say, who am I and am I okay? If you let your kids do all of that with their phone, you're gonna stay here, okay? So you say, I get it. What is the limit? You can text your friends here and there, but at a certain time of night, phone goes in the kitchen. Often they'll say, okay, what about you? All right, fine, I'll put my phone in the kitchen too, on the charger. We have to stop because what is happening, the reason those mental health figures are escalating so much is because kids don't know who they are without a phone. That's actually really sad. Okay? How could a kid that's 12 or 14 or 16 only know they're worthwhile if they can text a group or Snapchat or Instagram someone? That's where, as parents, we have to be able to say, it's okay. How connected are you? You just were with them all day long. Think about how you were raised. You had to do it differently, right? But you weren't really disconnected. We have to push the notion, yeah, you can text, but then at a certain time you gotta put it away.
Coinciding with this increased need to, as you're saying, give information and also set boundaries that we haven't grown up with and are new and we have to balance with what everybody else in the community is doing, is this natural, as you said, independence that they're trying to develop. And one of the things we found extremely challenging is not forcing or they don't, how do you say it so it feels like they have the power to choose, but you're still, you know, like if you say it, they'll say, oh, that's a great idea, interesting, thanks for telling me. If I say it, you know, shut up, I don't want to hear it from you.
Right.
There's a sense of being forced and it raises their need to defy, even though you're trying to say something good.
Right. So that's a great question because again, if we go back to the development, like, the question is, if she were to tell her kids, oh, you know what, this isn't great for you, they'd be like, oh, good information, and just blow it off. They might hear it better from me. How do you help them with that? How do you help them choose a boundary and make it kind of stick? So what I think you do with that is you give them some information, okay? This is pretty scary to most people. I've shown this slide, we've done a million of these lectures, and everyone is like, oh my gosh, like, what? So I think that you give them that, and you say, that's where as a parent, it's okay for you to say, this is actually the science, and this is the boundary we'd like you to have, okay? You do not unlearn information. Once you hear something, you do not unlearn it. You might not acquiesce immediately, and if you're a teenager, chances are you're really not gonna acquiesce immediately, but you think about it. Every time you go back to that, you kind of think. And kids do moderate themselves. If we take the phone from them because their grades are bad and they're not getting any sleep, it takes a couple days, and then they're like, oh my gosh, actually I feel better. I have a kid, a little older, college-age kid, stopped with his phone, and he didn't go out the other night because he missed a text, because he was so addicted to his phone. So he missed a group that was going out, and he texted me that night, and he said, I'm so frustrated, this is so stupid, I can't do this. The next day he said, oh my God, I'm caught up and I'm well rested. It's like, that was amazing. I think I'm gonna do it a couple days a week. So again, how do they learn? They learn through experience, and you have to be able to tolerate that lane of discomfort to say, actually, I'm gonna make this decision for you, and then let you struggle with it, okay? And you can say to them, look, I know you don't really believe me, there's tons of information on this, but this is what we're gonna do. In our house,
Tolerating the discomfort relationally is really helpful.
tolerating the discomfort is really hard as parents, right? But you have to be able to tolerate discomfort because, again, you're a role model. You're showing these guys they can tolerate discomfort. They don't have to have immediate gratification. They don't need to be what are they texting at midnight? What are they texting at 2 in the morning? Really? There's nothing healthy about that. And that's where we have to say, you don't get your phone at night. It's not good for you. And you don't, that's where I buy in, you maybe need to be connected after school to 9 p.m., but really, what's the connection late at night? Any given Sunday through Thursday. We don't need that.
So that slide, you know, the cocaine and
Oh yeah, this is a good one too.
so when you, but just like the cocaine, like somebody who actually has like a cocaine addiction, you can't just like take that away and they're like, thanks for taking that away. Like, we're gonna sit in this discomfort together, you know? Like, it's the same thing with our kids, which is why I've told a million friends, like, you're the parent, take it away. And then my kids got there, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's not so easy. And like in my house, it's nuclear when you take that thing away.
It's an addiction.
It is. And so
So-
when you take it away, like the discomfort, like I can sit in discomfort. I can't sit in like violence, you know, and like anger and like nuclear war.
Okay, well that's an indication that they are addicted, right? When you hit that, and there isn't anything else you would allow them to pretty much be addicted to without getting some help. You have to balance it, like, you know, cold turkey doesn't work for everyone. So you do have to point out to them, look, you can do whatever you want. How old are your kids?
10 and 12. It's the 12-year-old who's like
Okay,
all
at
over it.
12, you have to be able to control your 12-year-old or we're in trouble, okay? You have a lot of things you can do to control the 12-year-old. I don't care what you do. You can throw a tantrum, you can jump up and down, you can call me names if you choose. But this is not, we're not giving you your phone. So find something else. It will escalate and then it will drop off. You have to set that parameter. If you're not willing to tell your 12-year-old he can't use their phone, what are you gonna do? Because you're right there, you're right on the cusp of vaping, nicotine, THC, alcohol, all of that. And the sooner that hits the developing brain with the raw cells, the more addictive it becomes. And if your kid can become addicted to a phone at a young age, it's the exact same mechanism, which I think is the point, is it's the same mechanism as drugs or alcohol on a developing brain. Okay? So that's how significant it is that you say, we aren't doing it. A 12-year-old doesn't need a phone. They probably can't keep track of their belongings yet. You're giving them a $600 to $800 device and saying, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of this. I know it's super hard. But it is something you have to stand the ground with, because if you think about it, what's next? Where do we go from here? Okay?
I have a question. I find it even harder for the boys. You know, we moved here in the last year, and you know, with my son, it's the way the boys are socializing, and they're gaming, and they're coming together and socializing. And you know, I was lenient about it with COVID and the fact that we moved from New York City, and I thought I want him to have friends. And now that I'm trying to do that and take it away, it's an anger thing. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not going to have friends if you don't let me do this. And that's an even harder thing than
So
taking
you
it from
just
my
have
daughter.
to limit it, because they do. They love the gaming and they love the connection. So limit it. You can have it when you get home from school. You can have your phone for, you know, everybody's different. Like, usually they need a little downtime when they get out of school. So you can have your phone till we eat dinner. And then to do your homework, all phones go in the kitchen, or turn it off, or whatever that is, whatever your monitoring is, it's okay. That is how they socialize. We're not going backwards. Again, once you give someone something, it's very hard to take it back, but you have to monitor it, okay? And you say, look, you guys can do this, but also you need to go do things. You need to go to town and get food and figure out how to negotiate all these different things. We can't just keep it online because they don't know how to then moderate. And what is really important is the reason we see so much mental illness is because they don't know how to interact with each other. We have to force that in live terms. We are humans. That's how we interact.
So further to her point, I have a son as well, and it's a large group and they all game together, and that's the social life. And I think given the winter, I think when it gets warmer, they will get out.
Yep.
But how do you, whether it's my daughter or my son, how do you navigate the group, friends, parents, when you feel one way and try to implement that, but then the other parents don't? So for example, if he's gaming with 10 boys, and I'm the only one that says, get out, make plans, then none of the moms and dads, are fine with it, then how do you navigate that? That's, I find that I am doing that stuff, but it's hard with other parents to get them on board, and then I feel horrible because I'm pulling him out of a social environment, and they're not. So how do you navigate that?
So it is hard. I would encourage you to talk to some of the other parents and just tell them, because I think a lot of times parents are like, I want to do it, but I'm afraid to do it. Of those 9 other people, you're gonna maybe get 2 other people that will stick with you. You're not getting the whole group, okay? But again, that's where you go back to, what do I feel? What's my belief? How hard is it? If you think back on these things, or the parents, if you had strict parents or whatever, we have boatloads of research over and over and over again. High structure, high nurture is how to raise the most productive, mentally strong, resilient people. So that is the piece of you saying, I know, honey, you don't have to withdraw it completely, but Saturday, it's beautiful out. You guys can game from 1 to 4 if you want. But in the morning, there's stuff you gotta do. We've got some chores to do. You gotta go to your sister's soccer game. I don't care that you don't like it. You're gonna go anyway. All those pieces are modeling what's life like. The reason we see so much struggle when we get to where you guys, I know where you are at middle school, but as you're going to higher, high school, college, why we see these escalate as we go out is because we aren't developing this ability at the middle school age, which is critical to have any sense of self-gratification or self-efficacy. Who am I and what can I do when things get taken away from me? Really important that those kids find something to do and figure it out. And you have to just stick with that. Being mean, I would say, get used to that. I mean, honestly, I remember, like, my kids, for a while I made them use a group phone, like a family phone. And that was just the worst. Like, what do you, like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like, whatever. Like, I have pretty high functioning kids. They got to college and they knew how to adjust or do different things. Like, okay, it's not coming back my way. Right now, kids in college are a mess. Okay? Because we told them that they just had to get good grades, whether it was sports or music, they could take that too. They would get to college and everything would be great. We never required them to develop an internal sense. We just gave them a linear path. We told them to get on that, just really focus on that. College is amazing and life is good after that. What happened is they never had the ability to sit through discomfort. No one really told them they weren't that great. If they got a lot of likes or whatever, it was all right there. And then they get to college and they're like, holy crap, what am I gonna do? No one really cares about all these pieces. And no one's pulling the pieces together for me. So if that is what encourages you, how critical it is to do now, I encourage you to do that.
So on that avoiding the over-parenting, reading down How to Raise an Adult, I'm thinking about, for this summer, giving my almost 14-year-old a series of life skill challenges. And I'm wondering if you think, because parents are also, if something happens, then I'm to blame if I've taken too much risk. But I'm thinking of like putting, having my kid plan how to go down to New York City, how to get on the train, how to navigate going to a destination.
Awesome.
On his
Amazing.
own. And I think he can go with his other brother who's very similar in age, and I'm thinking of 5 different challenges over this summer reading this book about what they need to do. And I'm just trying to test with you, do you think I'm taking too much risk as a parent by sending him on a train to New York City by himself? And if he has to have a problem, it actually says in the book it's good for them to have to be able to ask a stranger for help, so if they fail or have a problem, that's okay, right?
Yeah, I would have some built-in, like a little bit of a safeguard with stuff like that, but I think it's really important. It goes to developing this notion, not only, it goes wrong, what do I do when things go wrong? We don't want to leave them in New York City just like, free for all, right? I remember when my daughter, we were walking down the street somewhere in New York City and some guy asked her for her number, some creepy guy. She was pretty little, she's probably 14. So she gave him her number, right? Her phone number. And the rest of us were like, you idiot, what are you doing? Whatever. But it was a good learning lesson for her to realize, okay, what did you just do? If I told her, don't give your number to anybody, she was just like, Mom, shut up. Right? So all those things are okay, but I would build in some safeguards. And let them see, really important, your teenager, God, I could stay here all day. Your teenagers, our tweens, really important right now that you start to build the sense of, okay, what would you do? I'm not letting you game all day. What are some options? Put it back in their hands. Like, what would you be willing to do? This isn't an option, so where do you go here? Again, that's building those mentally flexible muscles. My mom is a jerk, I hate my mom, whatever, you don't really care. Okay? That allows them to develop the other thing that is really missing from this stage on is passion. What do I love to do? What else can I do other than be on these devices? It is critical because this is where mental illness is coming from, no sense of self. If you don't know how to satisfy yourself or what you like to do, think how lonely that is. Think how sad that is. And that's why we are having mental health crises.
Would you mind just repeating something you said earlier and maybe just unpacking it a bit? I thought I heard you said the 2 sort of behaviors or approaches that research shows produce highly productive and healthy kids. Did you say high nurtured and high structured?
Yes.
I just didn't hear that.
So gold standard of parenting, high structure, high nurture. I love you to death, but this is the rule.
Gotcha.
Okay? And again, that's like, these are the boundaries. I'm not taking it away from you. And I love you through it. And when you screw up, if you make a huge mistake, I still absolutely love you to death. But how could we do it differently? Okay? Really, really important from now on. I want you to think of parenting like this, kind of a net. Like I'm going to give you more and more. I will be here for you. I think we have, I can't remember how many more slides we have, but I think we're going to go off the slides. Just quickly, go back to the other one. I'm gonna finish the slide super quickly and then answer questions because I think there's a lot here. Okay. I think this is really important for you to know good information right now because this answers some of your stuff where chemically the young brain from now up until you're in your adulthood, the neurotransmitters, the wires, the hormones are getting the let's go, this sounds fun, novelty seeking, anything that seems new or fun, which is all the phone, gaming, phone, all that kind of stuff, is getting hit by your brain. It's getting picked up 5 times to 1 over the neurotransmitter that says stop. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe this isn't a good idea. So again, it is very hard to deal with. I'm well aware it's very hard to deal with the kids who don't want to stop because they're getting way more neurotransmitters saying go for it. Again, neurologically, biologically, the body's getting you ready to be able to be on your own, so it's pushing you towards creativity and novelty seeking. And they're not going to think no because the greatest predictor of behavior is gratification, it's not risk. We all think about why aren't you assessing the risk? They don't assess the risk. They think how much fun will this be, right? And that's where gaming and social media and texting all becomes really fun because it's new and it's in the moment, in the minute, and they are hardwired for that. So it is like trying to take drugs from them. But that's again where we have to be really strong with that. Because the upside to this is no other time are they as creative and ingenious as through these ages. And that's where you can be okay with them being bored. Go figure it out. All of a sudden they'll develop some weird game outside, shooting hoops from the pool to the, they will take care of it.
See if I can say this right. So once they've had this excitement from social media and the games and whatever, it almost feels like it's hard to go back because they don't seem to find excitement in the other things. Even when you've taken it back, you know, it's like nothing can kind of match that. So how do you combat against that?
You just have to sit with it and allow them to find something else because it is true. It's not that exciting. But again, why is this? What we want to think about is, why do I care about preventing it now? If it were something that just didn't matter and they grew out of it, so then when they get into high school, into college, it's not a problem, you could just let it go. But the reason that we don't want you to just let it go is because that sense of it's not enough, those things aren't exciting, is a problem because then what do? Soon you need nothing other than gaming or being on your phone is exciting, but that doesn't work very well for life.
No, and I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, how do you then like modulate it so that they can get that same excitement like out of like real life things? I don't,
Can I?
right?
It's a problem.
Yeah.
And you gotta get the time.
The chart that shows the dopamine being
Yep.
like the cocaine and social media is what causes everything else to feel boring, right? And then the cells will actually change in reverse so that normal life isn't boring anymore if you endure it long enough.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a great explanation because then again, it's like if we take away that drug, whether it's, you know, social media or cocaine or pot, then we can revert to something else. Okay? But the reason it's really hard is because over time, there is a piece of, that is, I hope she's okay. The violence piece must have been. So over time, it will revert, but you don't want that dopamine pump, because the dopamine pump in your brain doesn't really know what's being put in it to it. It knows what it's looking for, right? And you will have a very dissatisfying life if you can't regulate that. Okay? And that's what we're seeing. I mean, that isn't just my stance. That's why we're seeing so many issues with suicide and depression and anxiety. It's because we don't know what to do when that pump's not being primed.
I wanted to draw the conversation a little bit back to COVID and coming out of COVID. To a degree, we've been telling, everyone has been told, stay socially distant, texting, FaceTime, whatever it is socially distant with your friends rather than with a mask on, face on. Now the kids are back in school without masks for the past couple of weeks. So some old children, it's almost like they were really take it off, they put it under the kids in the first 2 days and have it on. But is there something, and I know especially for one of my children, to feel that social connection with a teacher is critical. Jasmine, I know to feel that for these past weeks, years, because the masks have come. So is there something you think that the schools can do to help the children now the masks are off? Do you think that will come naturally? Or by the same token, you are now allowing teachers, kids to form relationships where you can actually see the face. Is that it's obviously a better time to put the phone away, but is there something that the school and the community can help to do specifically, or something you have to you can teach the school to help that process?
I think it's such a natural process, and it's such a natural thing to want to then be. People are mindful. I think you do notice people kind of give each other a little more space, and people are more aware of how to interact with colds or hugging each other or shaking hands. That's pretty natural. I would just let it unfold and encourage them, though, now the masks are off, to kind of make that connection with their teacher. Maybe it's get to class a little early or spend a little time afterwards to kind of find that connection. If they're having trouble with it, then it's something that could be addressed more on an individual basis. I think you'll see them developing that. Yeah.
Is this something that you think will become part of the curriculum? Because it feels like it needs to be something they hear in the schools, not just from the parents.
You know what, I think it will be. Schools are starting to add mental health, mental well-being to their curriculums because they realize the whole mindset. And again, for your kids, I'm not just putting them down for using the phones or anything. It has been a very natural piece.
Sure.
And I definitely know, even personally, I think what we want to think about is what's the skill set they need to go to other things to solve anxiety or stress. We don't want them to only have one little device that they can't connect with.
But I almost feel like when I say it, my kids don't believe me if they hear it in the school environment from somebody objective. I think the dangers of technology, it would resonate.
You know what? I think it's super important. I've love to speak to the kids, and they ask amazing questions. Your kids want to know. They don't want to exactly act on it immediately, but they all think about it. They really do. They're
Can we get
really
Darby back
amazing.
for the kids?
I know. Seriously, we'd like you to speak to the.
I would love to. I do it all the
Carrie,
time.
get that to
It's not
Rosa.
It's not our jurisdiction, but you can send an email to Adam.
It is really important because these kids, we're asking them to do these really hard things without giving them the background, right? So I think that's logical education.
I'm not sure if anyone else has this experience, but when I talk to my daughter about using
you something and they'd be like, Mom, you're not listening. I'm like, you're right, I'm not. I'm on my phone. So I do think it's important because if we're asking them to do that, anything we do with parenting should be about that, okay? And I think that that's really important to keep in mind. And do endure that everybody says, I'm the only one who doesn't have social media. It's not true. It's not remotely true.
So you mentioned the concept of sitting with discomfort. I guess I'm wondering, is it wise for us as parents to create situations in which we require our kids to do that? So an example of if you know that you have, like, this is a personal example, I have a 10-year-old who is my second son, who's really, school is not a challenge for him, like so he's never gonna be pushed in that regard, at least at an early age.
Yep.
But sports, you know, he kind of likes sports, but he's not particularly great at them. And sort of that's the thing that I've kind of kept pushing, like keep trying something, keep doing this, because sometimes he's really uncomfortable in that environment. But he learns from the experience of it that I totally messed that up and it didn't make me feel great, but I moved on and life went on, and actually then maybe I even laughed at myself about it, right? So I guess I'm wondering, like, should we be trying to like create force out of it, especially if we know that our kid maybe tends one way or the other, or is that actually like more unhealthy to like make them suffer through things that we know they might not be good at?
No, there's incredible merit in doing that. To expect them to be recruited at a high level on a sport when they hate sports, not realistic. But everything they gain from not only being in a group environment and a team, but so important for them to realize I'm not good at everything.
Right. So true.
Right? Like, you're an amazing athlete. I'm better at chemistry. Like, but we're both okay is really important. And how can I help you when you can't pass the chemistry test? That's what we want to build. That's empathy. And you do have to set up situations to build empathy. And that isn't the same as sympathy. Empathy is, okay, I see where you are. I see that could be difficult. It's not my experience, but I see where that could be difficult for someone else. Really important that we do that. And at a certain age, they don't have to do soccer every Saturday, but again, it's healthy to have a sport. What do you like? Not because we really want you to be a top athlete, but because it's really good to interact and have your body moving. It's great for your brain as well. It downregulates, all those things. Really, it's really okay to do that.
Before we get off the subject of having you come back and speak to the kids, my brain's like just, do you know the way that, is it, like you guys said, hey, if you have any questions for Darby, will you guys be asking feedback from this? I'm just trying to make it easy for us to all give a concerted yes to having her back. Did you send out a questionnaire? What did you think of this meeting? Was it great? And then if we all just put feedback into that, you can collect it and give it to him.
And just FYI, I know social media is coming up in that social emotional learning piece that they do in school. So expect that coming this spring.
They teach this stuff in health class. I mean,
Yeah.
my son's a freshman, and he comes home with these huge revelations that I told him, and I'm like, oh.
Remember, the reason how do they build intelligence? And that I don't think most people talk about isn't because he doesn't want to listen to his mom. It's because they build their knowledge through experience. Okay? So it has to hit them at 3 different levels is what you would consider. It got to come at you a couple different ways. And if we apply that to ourselves, it's pretty true, right?
Can you just quickly go through the rest of your slides?
Yes. Okay, so we got that one. So why that's important? So they are prone to want that. Go to the next one. Okay, again, these are counter solutions. No one's getting rid of their phones or their iPads or their Xboxes. I would love you to limit it and develop other sources. Really critical for building healthy kids. It is a myth to think that they don't want any adult interaction. What they're really guarding is judgment and negative interaction. Coaches, classmates, teachers, someone that can acknowledge them, really important to help them build those connections, okay? These are the last two, and I'm gonna just let you read them, and I'll take questions at the same time. You can give this a minute, Alan, and then if you go to the last one. I just thought this is helpful because I think we go into parenting and I think we all read the books about what do we do at 2 months? What do we do at 6 months? What do we do at age 2? And then it kind of disappears, right? Like, okay, I'm on my own now. But in my mind, it gets more and more important as time goes by and the areas get grayer. So I just thought it was helpful to put up a little bit of information to kind of remind us, at this age, your kids are, a lot of their interaction, it's mostly peer-driven, 30% peer-driven. So, do we think about who they're spending time with? Yeah, probably important. All these different pieces, if we think about where they are and what their brain does and where they're trying to go, then that informs how we parent. So I think, and then this is the last one. A couple people sent in questions and I want to answer those and then I'll open it up.
One of them was, how actively should parents advocate for their middle schoolers to socialize in person these days? My daughter insists that playdates are no longer done, but it's hard to see how kids can build meaningful friendships without seeing each other outside of school.
It's important that you do encourage it to a certain extent. Just like I really said, I'd love to be in person. I think it makes such a difference and you can't build those critical skills. So, again, like the play dates, a lot of the playing is online, the gaming or whatever, and it can be in your own rooms. That's fine, but do encourage, guys, we're dropping you to get pizza or whatever it is. You need to orchestrate a certain amount of live interaction.
The next one is, how long do you expect the decline in social emotional to last? It took 2 years to get here. Will it take 2 years to undo the damage?
I think it will. I think it could take longer if we don't focus on going back to what we can control. And what we can control is how we interact in live terms.
And the last is, can you talk more about what you call the 4 dimensions of relationship expressed in, I am here, I hear you, I understand, I care. Can you give examples of when and how to communicate those sentiments most effectively?
So again, that's on my that came from a post on my Instagram, and I think it's really important that you guys are all headed into this stage of child development where it's about building a relationship with your kids. Are they gonna listen to me? Will they respect what I say? And how do we do that? The key part there is that they want to be respected. They want you to think they have some knowledge. They want you to listen to them, and they don't want you to always solve their problems by knowing better. And I think especially when we get mad at them or when they're doing something that we're like, why did you just do that? Like, you've been told a million times not to do that. Our immediate response is kind of anger or a dismissive attitude. If we're talking about how to let them build a relationship, it's like, okay, you know what, that was not a great choice. What were you thinking? How could we do this differently? So I want to kind of understand where you are, and then I'm going to still support you, but how could we do this in the future? That's how you build a relationship, and that's how you build a relationship with anyone. Do I have some ground to make a mistake? And that's really important, because if they start to sense you're there for them, then they're going to be more willing to come to you. Because they're trying hard to figure out all this stuff that they're supposed to be taking on. And if they sense you're going to judge them outright or correct them, they're going to push you away. So I think that that's really important. And that goes also to the piece of sitting with the discomfort. Okay, you didn't get picked. You're the only one of your friends that's not on the lacrosse team. That's you know what, we're gonna sit with that, we're gonna be sad, but we're gonna move on, and I'm here for you. That goes a lot further than calling the coach or telling them everybody else is awful or that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Can you say those 4 dimensions again? I hear you and I care, but they all sounded important.
Yeah.
I am here, I hear you, I understand, and I care.
Thanks.
I'm trying very hard to navigate this feeling of a child feeling average, and I've always supported my kids, and there is nothing wrong with average. Average is great, right?
Yeah.
There's something going on that the kids are in middle school and beginning high school. They're either in honors classes or they're in resource and they need extra help. And if you're not there in one of those 2 places and you're just average, there's something wrong with you. And now it's escalated when I'm noticing I'm a freshman. If you're not on anti-anxiety medication or antidepressants, there's something wrong with you. And I have a child who's coming to me and saying, why am I the only one of my friends? It's upsetting.
Yeah.
Why am I the only
It's
one
hard.
of my friends who is not on medication? Everyone talks about it, like, do I need something too? And it's very hard. I was telling her, there's nothing wrong with you, like, be happy, you don't need this. But it's really strange.
It is really strange, and again, remind them to be careful of the everybody's, because a very interesting fact is over time, the mental health piece of the prescriptions really has not increased super significantly, except in 2 areas, the ADHD medicine and then an antidepressant. But, so that definitely has increased, but they are, if you look at it, ADHD is a separate category, but with anxiety or depression, and anxiety is usually treated if it's long-term with an antidepressant, it can be helpful because it pumps more serotonin in or, you know, norepinephrine, depending on the kind they give you, but it doesn't take away the problem. So again, that's where encouraging them, and let's get away from the average. It's like, you're amazing, you don't need extra support, okay? What's your passion? What is your tolerance for? You can be sad and you can hang with that. You don't always have to be the best. What is this best? In the long term, what's an honors course get you? Okay, so you want to, and I'm not putting those down, but you want to help them kind of peel it back and be like, okay, actually I am okay. All right, and that again comes from, it's really hard for these kids if they're always looking at something else, seeing amazing looking people at amazing places, right? And then you've got honors courses and AP courses, and it's like, holy crap, I'm not even a part of any of that. That's where you want to pull it back and be like, you know what, that is all right. You're amazing in this way or that way, okay? And that does take some pulling out, what is it that you like? What is it that you love to do? What makes you happy? You don't need medicine. I think we are too quick to go to a medication because a lot of times it doesn't resolve the problem unless you've done some of the work of therapy.
Can you talk about this peer interaction more than 30% of their time?
Yeah.
What that's about?
So think about that, because when they go to school and they're here all day, and then they probably have extracurriculars or something else. So if they're around their peers most of the time, that's where the feedback's coming from. So that's where it is important to have a sense of what's going on with their friends and who their friends are. Okay? Anything else? I think we're running out of time.
I just want to say something. I'm one of the CMS reps on the Health and Wellness Committee, and we actually spoke about this week, and we're going to be rolling out a campaign to help the students and the parents navigate this. And we're kind of treating it as like an epidemic, like an addiction, because we're noticing the uptick. And I'd love to reach out to you just to see how can we get this information in the hands of the students. We do have more of like a print
Yeah, I think that's really important, and again, for kids, what's super important is, and there is a whole thing, I did something at the Brunswick Upper School for 400 boys the other day on anxiety, and it was some of the weirdest questions I've ever heard, but they said they'd never had so many questions at any lecture. It has nothing to do with me, it had to do with the topic, stress and anxiety and how to manage it. And I think that as you develop your program, it's really important that you think of live speaking and slides and pieces for kids this age. It's see it, say it, read it, write it. So it isn't just giving them a book, okay?
Exactly. There was a reluctance though to have in person because we had recommended that.
Yeah.
And the higher ups were like, oh, I don't know if we can get everyone in the auditorium, but I think we really need to push that because I think even just being with their peers and hearing it together is
So important to fill this up with all your kids and hear other kids say, I struggle. Right?
I was going to say that you said this is going to be on Zoom. Like,
Yes.
I want to rewatch this with my family, with my kids, and let them hear it firsthand because, yeah, so many of these things I've said and whatever, but it just gains so much more validity coming from you with the slides.
I think that's really important, and again, I like the slides. Obviously, you could probably tell I'm a pretty visual person. I don't take it in that well in black and white. Everything I gave you a paper today and it had markers on it. I mean, that's how I take it in, but actually that's how most people learn. And so I think that that's really important as you do it. An interactive way is really significant. And it will be available Zoom. I don't know, Alan will do a little editing, but then we'll give it to you guys and they'll figure out how to access that.
I had the same thought that she did. Is there anything in this that you would consider like inappropriate or kind of sometimes when the kids know what you're doing, they can kind of resist, you know what I mean? Like sometimes they'll understand it better, but then sometimes they'll be like, I know what you're doing, you're trying to, whatever. Yeah. Is any of that, it seems like it would be appropriate and have conversations, have them watch this, or is there
I think it's totally appropriate. We talked about that a little bit. What I would do is anytime you give it to a kid, an adolescent, a teenager, and say, just watch it, see what it means to you. Don't give them the watch this, I told you so. Give them, okay? So just open it up that you're like, I want you to see this because it's pretty good information. I didn't know all this. And, see what it does for you. Again, a lot of times if you just kind of pull back, you drop the information and then you withdraw, they can deal with it. As opposed to you giving them the information and then being all over them. Okay?
Thank you.
So, my kids are used to a mom who often says things like, figure it out on your own, especially navigating school. I pretty much never get involved in that regard for, like emailing and that kind of stuff. But sometimes I feel bad, especially my first-in-law, who I think there are times I probably should have intervened or did a little bit more in that regard. So I guess my question is, and it's a hard question, but like at what point do you feel, or what sort of traits or situations might you actually say, yeah, this probably is too difficult for my kid to navigate, and I should be a little more mama bear in that regard, right?
Yeah.
But yet, do it in a healthy way so that they have plenty of opportunities in their life to figure out their own problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to know. I love to hear that you want to help them self-advocate, so really encourage them. Things like bullying, overt bullying. There's a case in a middle school in New Canaan where there's actually physical abuse involved, but the girl wasn't saying anything. That's where we need to come in as the adults and take over serious situations like that. Something academic where you feel the bottom's falling out, it's important to just say, hey, what are you seeing? But ask your kids, say, would you like some help? I think you can do this. It's better to help support them to do these things than to take it over for them, okay? But if you're sensing it's serious, if you're sensing that gut feeling, go with your gut and reach out and say, hey, I'm just curious. Not necessarily telling what people to do, but saying, what's your read on this? Because a lot of times with kids, especially in difficult social situations, there's 2 sides or 4 sides, right? So we need to know what that is. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you for